You're watching BCTV, Branford's community access station.
This is BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of Branford.
I'm Commissioner Madeline Buzz Clem. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight to our swearing in for our three new firefighters. Our chairman is away, so I'm sort of filling in for him. So at this point, Commissioner LaCroix will do the swearing in. Okay. And then Chief Mahoney will have some words.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Clem actually was on the commission when I was hired 23 years ago, so she's been with us for a long time. Very nice, very nice. So welcome everybody to the Branford Fire Headquarters. This is our swearing-in ceremony. We are very pleased to welcome 3 new firefighters to our ranks. We have another event going on in town where a lot of you may know about the explosion that happened in North Haven. We participate with the regional SWAT team. We had a medic assigned that night, and tonight's a fundraiser for those officers that were injured over at the Stony Creek Brewery here in Branford. So we had to import our pipers via stereo here tonight. So anyways, welcome everybody. Branford Fire Department is a combination fire department for the families who are new to us. We have approximately 120 members, career, part-time, and volunteer. We run out of 5 stations and do approximately 6,000 calls a year. We are responsible for all hazards in Branford, fire, EMS, hazardous materials, technical rescue. Again, we participate a lot regionally for some of these things like dive rescue and rope rescue, confined space rescue with neighboring departments. So we are responsible for a lot. A lot of what we do is the transport emergency medical service at a paramedic level. So all of our career firefighters are required by their union contract to be paramedics, and it's a big responsibility that they hold, and I know these guys will do a great job. So I'm just going to start by asking Commissioner LaCroix to come up. Commissioner LaCroix is going to administer the oath to each of the new firefighters. We're going to bring them up one at a time. Their family members will be able to come up and pin the badge, and then we'll have an opportunity to take pictures. Then they can step off to the sides, and we'll do it for each candidate. That way they get a little bit of the spotlight on each one of them tonight. So with that, I'm going to call up Mackenzie Spooner. Firefighter Mackenzie Spooner lives in Branford. She has her 2 children, Evan and Ian, with us tonight. Mackenzie holds a master's degree in physical therapy. She volunteers for the Special Olympics. She's a firefighter 1 and hazmat ops certified. She is currently an EMT but enrolled in the New Haven Sponsor Hospital paramedic program. And her badge tonight will be pinned by Evan and Ian. Mackenzie started in Branford as a volunteer with MP Rice Company 2, so she's kind of familiar with our operations already, I would hope. So Mackenzie, if you could step over to Commissioner here.
Raise your right hand. State your name. Mackenzie Spooner,
solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge my full duties as a firefighter, that I will respect and honor the rules and regulations of the Branford Fire Department, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will act with all haste in answering alarms, to obey implicitly the orders of my superiors, and to always conduct myself in a manner to bring credit to myself and to the department, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion. So help me God.
I do.
Welcome to the Branford Fire Department.
Thank you.
Come on up, boys.
Branford Medical Quarters. Thank you, Ernie.
You guys did a great job. So next we're going to call up Nicholas Amendola. Nick comes to us from West Haven, where his father is an Allentown firefighter, retired. He is with us in the audience tonight. Nick was also a volunteer firefighter in West Haven at the Allentown Firehouse. He worked for AMR Bridgeport before joining us as an EMT. He also worked for many years in a marina in West Haven, where he had some mechanic responsibilities, and being a shoreline community, that's going to come in value to us here as well. He's a graduate of the Inland Haven Sponsor Hospital Paramedic. Program. He's still precepting for it to get his paramedic medical control, but we see nothing but good things ahead for Nick. He's a graduate of Recruit Class 61 as of last night, and his badge will be pinned on by his father, John Amendola. I'm right over here.
State your name.
Nicholas Amendola.
Solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge my full duties as a firefighter, that I will respect and honor the rules and regulations of the Branford Fire Department, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will act with all haste in answering alarms, to obey implicitly the orders of my superiors, and to always conduct myself in a manner to being a credit to myself and to the department, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion.
I do.
Just want to make sure. Okay. And last but certainly not least, Mitchell Mako. Mitch comes to us from Oxford. He recently moved to Glastonbury, lives with his wife, Angelica, who's with us in the audience tonight. He previously worked at AMR Bridgeport as a paramedic there, and he is also an ACLS Advanced Cardiac Life Support, Pediatric Advanced Life Support, and BLS CPR instructor. He has previous experiences of volunteer with Oxford Volunteer Fire Department. He has restored a couple of cars, so again, a guy with some mechanical abilities, and if anybody knows, a lot of what you do as a firefighter is problem solving. So mechanical ability has a lot to do with what we do. So we're happy that we're getting some younger guys in here that know the difference between a flathead and a Phillip head screwdriver, because some of them don't these days. He is also a graduate of Connecticut Fire Academy Recruit Class 61 as of last night, and Angelica will pin his badge on tonight.
Raise your right hand. State your name.
Mitchell Mako.
solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge my full duty as a firefighter, that I will respect and honor the rules and regulations of the Branford Fire Department, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will act with all haste in answering alarms, to obey implicitly the orders of my superiors, and to always conduct myself in a manner to bring credit to myself and to the department, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion. So help me God.
You do.
Welcome to Branford.
Good job, Commissioner. Well, that concludes our swearing-in ceremony, short and sweet. I welcome you to our family, as I do welcome these firefighters to our family, and I wish them a safe and happy and very positive career, and I know that they're going to be a great asset to the town of Branford. So we have a commission meeting. We'll be adjourning upstairs at this point. You are welcome to enjoy some coffee and some snacks, and I'm sure your firefighters would love to show you around their new home here at the Branford Fire Department. So thank you very much. Quick recess. We'll take some pictures and then. No, you didn't open it, so we'll start upstairs.
Good evening. Welcome to the May 24th, 2018 Board of Fire Commissioners. We just had a swearing in downstairs of our 3 new firefighters, Mitchell Mako, Nicholas Amendola, and Mackenzie Spooner. So they will do well for us. Okay, call to order. Basically, we need approval of our minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We want to do them all at one time because we have February 22nd, March 14th, and March 20th.
So moved.
Kathy, all right, hang on, Kathy.
Second.
And Al, okay. All right. Any questions or anything? Okay, all approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Let's see, committee reports, Finance for Commissioner Riccio is not here. You have?
Yeah, I have here the printout for you to review tonight. That just gives you a update on where we are in our operating budget. We're getting to the end of the fiscal year, which ends June 30th. And 2 weeks ago, I notified the finance director, Jim Finch, that probably for the first time in about 5 years, we're going to have to go to contingency to cover some of our shortfalls. It's not unexpected considering we've had multiple vacancies throughout the year. At a good portion of the year, we had up to 5 people out, either through vacancies due to retirement or long-term illness or injury. So it really it was unsustainable. As much as we didn't want to, we did take some measures to stop the bleeding. We shut Rescue 2 down at the end of February, which, as you know, it's a double-edged sword because we don't have the additional personnel to put another ambulance on the road, and then if we when we need that ambulance, we end up having to go out of town for it. But we felt at the time that we had to do something just because we simply weren't budgeted for it. So we closed Rescue 2 down. And it slowed it down, and now that these 2 firefighters are out of the fire academy, but again, we're at the end of the year. In previous years, we were able to cover a good portion of this through transfer from other line items, but the problem with that is over the years of doing that, you put off equipment purchases and you're essentially kicking the can down the road. We weren't in the position to do that this year. So the funds that we were used to having to move things around are not there to cover these shortfalls. So at this time, it's almost a definite that we'll be going to ask the Board of Finance for some money from contingency to cover. Essentially, the accounts that are suffering, obviously, are the overtime account and the sick account. The sick account is an underfunded account to begin with, and especially when you consider when somebody actually uses sick time for a long-term injury that they receive, we're just not budgeted for that. And the overtime account is again to cover the vacancies, especially when we have the firefighters in the fire academy. We're paying their salary out of the educational incentive because they're in training, but they're being replaced on overtime. So it does take a big toll on it. And again, it's just we did our best to avoid it, but sometimes these things are inevitable. And so I just gave Jim the heads up, and I'm sure he's passed that on to the Board of Finance. And so that's where we are with the finance right now.
Personnel, Commissioner Massey is away. Training, it's me.
Commissioner, if I could just mention
Okay, go
a
ahead.
couple things about personnel. So at this point, with the 3 firefighters we swore in, we are up to full staff on paper. Nick and Mitch are going to take almost another month of orientation before they can actually start. They've been at the fire academy for 15 weeks, and then they have some precepting to do for their paramedic medical control in our region, because both of them were from the Bridgeport region. So they have that to do. In July, we're facing 2 more vacancies from the retirement of Deputy Chief John Massey and firefighter paramedic John Kujma, who have both announced their retirement. So we have a little bit more pain to endure before we can get to full staffing. Other than that, everybody, we are back to full strength as far as any illness or injuries.
Good.
I'm gonna knock on wood, but everybody's back to duty and everybody's doing well. So
Good.
Great. Yeah, we hate to lose our guys, we really do, they're old timers. Training, as usual, I say this every month, training is always ongoing. It can be a big problem for members of the fire department because of so many calls that we do. Volunteers, hopefully a little bit lucky, they have certain nights during the week that they can train. But for our career staff, the deputy chief does try to plan a certain time during the day and which they train. We did have, I guess for people passing by, for 5 weeks in April, we did have the regional burn trailer, which was parked out here by the side of the building. This is a burn trailer. I was in it, but not with the smoke going. How do I say it? Breathes smoke. It breathes smoke.
it's a propane fired live fire and,
Right.
and
So-
theatrical smoke.
And the guys get full gear, the whole 9 yards, and they go in there, and there's things for them to do and all this sort of stuff. So it is quite a trailer and everything. I keep saying we need to have it back more, but our volunteers and obviously the career staff did train on it. We had a rapid intervention class held just this last weekend, and I guess there were 33 firefighters attended, and according to this, is rigorous training focused on firefighter rescue and challenged by all physically and mentally. Okay, Chief, talk about that now.
Rapid intervention team is a team of specially trained firefighters whose only purpose on the fire ground is to rescue firefighters that may become trapped or entangled or simply lost in running out of air in an atmosphere that's immediately dangerous to life and health. And what we've learned through many incidents throughout the nation over the years, including some experience of our own back in 1996 with the loss of Eddie Ramos, was that it takes almost a full company, which is multiple firefighters, teams of firefighters, to rescue a single firefighter in full firefighting gear. They're weighing 60 pounds of gear, which may be soaked with water and all the additional gear. They may be entrapped or entangled in wires or collapsed structural members, And so the same type of rescue techniques we may have to do where we can see, we have to practice them in a completely smoke-filled environment where we may have to move this firefighter that with all that gear and everything could weigh up to 300 pounds, perhaps up a set of stairs, out a window, however we can get them out of the house, because once they stop breathing, we have 4 to 6 minutes to get them out. So very intense training. I participated in it myself, and I can tell you that I'm getting too old for that. But it was it's important, and there's so many different skills that firefighters need. We've talked about it pretty much every meeting where each skill that we possess that is something that needs to be practiced, or it's a use it or you lose it type of situation. So very important training. We used the house at 26 Church Street. The neighbors were fantastic over there. They tolerated us. We tried to be as unintrusive as possible, but it was a fantastic weekend. And again, we had 23 Branford firefighters and 7 firefighters from out of town in the training. So it was really good. And just for the public's education, if we were to have a structural firefighter, what we term a working fire, where there's an actual fire that requires more than just a single hose line to put out, we call Guilford for our rapid intervention team, and they send a team over, and we reciprocate to Guilford. So that's one of the ways we participate regionally with each other.
Yeah, no, this is great. Let's see, we have 2 firefighters, Amendola and Mako, successfully passed their 15 weeks at the Connecticut Fire Academy, and they will be, as the chief said, undergoing orientation. And then we have 3 volunteers who are in pump operator course, and 1 member in Firefighter 1 and another in Firefighter 2 training. So that's why I said there's always something going on in training. So, and all right. Okay, let's see, training. Apparatus, Commissioner LaCroix.
Engine 2 was in an accident recently and has been fully repaired and is back in service. Marine 2 had some pump work done to it. Marine 5 is also in service, right?
Yep, we had the pump work was actually to Marine 5. And as these things happen, Marine 2 was out doing some driver training, and we lost the port motor. They couldn't restart it. They brought it in. It was diagnosed and fixed, but the same day that happened, we couldn't get a prime on the pump in Marine 5. We realized that a gasket had, the weather just beats on these things. So Marine 5 over the winter, the gasket for the priming motor went bad, so we had to rebuild that. Both boats are now back in service.
Back in service for the holiday.
For the holiday.
Beginning of the boating season.
That's it.
Right.
So
That's
we're
great.
Our
ready to go.
marine rescues will start.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, yes.
And then engine 3 is back in service. Is that what I'm trying to remember?
Engine 3 is the one that's that we sold. So we're just waiting for the title, and they will take possession of that at that point. Right now, everything else is doing well.
Good. Let's keep it that way. Yep. EMS Commissioner Fox.
Well, as the chief notes in his report, the year-to-date ambulance revenue was $1,587,864, ahead of projection for this fiscal year. And Chief, do you want to talk about that award?
Sure. So several times a year, and depending on the year, more or less. But this year we had one cardiac arrest save, which is recognized by our local sponsor hospital, which is the doctors at EL that oversee our EMS system here in Branford. They do they're responsible for the region from Milford to Madison and then north to Wallingford, and they recognized all the departments who had cardiac arrest saves, and Branford was one. So Tuesday we participated, and a team of firefighters were recognized for a cardiac arrest save that actually happened in a very public location right on Main Street outside Town Pharmacy. And so what I would like to really point out about that is that because it was in a public location like that, the first responder CPR was a physician who happened to be there. They began chest compressions and cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which is CPR, which we would like all of our residents to learn, and they will have the opportunity to do so if they want on June 2nd, coming up at our open house. But it was that bystander CPR, that early intervention, that allows us the time for all of our other skills to come into play. And so it was really important. It was not just the doctor, but the first arriving police officer relieved the doctor, and the two of them did CPR as our units arrived, and then we were able to use our advanced cardiac life support skills to further treat the patient, and by the time they got to the hospital, we were able to get pulses restored, so that was good. But early CPR,
Right.
it's key. Learn CPR.
Yes. Buildings, Commissioner Fora.
For buildings, Chief, I guess Company 2's building repairs are going to start next week.
Yep, Company
That's
2
projected.
was damaged in that apparatus incident, and it truly was an incident which we'd like to say is certainly preventable, but sometimes these things happen. The middle compartment on that fire engine goes up horizontally, and when you look in the mirror, it's very difficult to see that it was open. And a group of firefighters were doing a truck test, and they just didn't realize that the door had been left open when it left the building. The apparatus does have a door alarm, and for whatever reason it wasn't working, so that has been repaired as well. But the apparatus was repaired and is back in service here at headquarters. The building should be fully repaired, hopefully within a week or so.
And Company 9's building looks like it's going out to bid in June.
Company 9's building is moving right along. We believe we've reached all of our last regulatory hurdles, and certainly all our town approvals have been completed. We have a meeting coming up Friday to talk to our architect, but the timeline still is go out to bid in June, hopefully award bids and get everything going so that we have a shovel in the ground by August.
Great.
Any idea of what completion will be next year, sometime spring?
We're actually hoping to be weather tight before December.
Oh, nice.
Or around December. The contingency plan for Company 9 is that we have reached an agreement with Bruce and Johnson's Marina on Block Island Road. The apparatus in the company will be able to respond from the marina facilities. Normally they would have all the boats in the winter months in the marina parking lots,
Up in the
and the
cradles.
buildings are filled with them. Now they have a little bit more space, and we've reached an agreement where they're going to allow us to
Nice.
use that. So we thank Brewers, Bruce and Johnson Marina, and we're going to be able to stay in full service relatively close to where their district is. So that's good news.
Good, good, okay. Last is pension and communications, that's me. Pension committee met last month, and we approved 41 firefighters for pension credit and for stipend. There was no one is retiring that we've been notified, and so we'll just have to wait and see here. So, we did have, the Board of Selectmen did meet the other day, and they approved Deputy Chief Timothy Murray from Company 4 and Lieutenant Harold Berringham with Company 2 to be our new committee members. So congratulations to the guys. Okay.
Good.
Chief's report, okay.
The report you have is dated for May 2nd. We typically cover the previous months in the report, so we have something to talk about. We haven't had a regular meeting since I think it was February, but this report covers March and April, and over those months in March we had 583 calls. If you remember, March was rather stormy. We had the windstorms, we had a couple of fairly severe storms that caused us quite a bit of extra workload during that month. April we did 475 calls. 65 incidents were generated in one 24-hour period from the March storm.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes.
yes, as Commissioner Fox can attest to, she was without power for a little bit.
We were lucky then.
So, aside from the sheer volume of calls that we did, and most of these were tree-related, wires down, trees on houses, trees on cars, people in the cars. Luckily, nobody was seriously injured during this time, but we did have a 20-minute extrication on the end of Silver Street that required the use of the heavy extrication equipment, commonly referred to as the jaws of life, and one person in that motor vehicle accident was severely injured, but we were able to free her and get her to care.
Oh my gosh.
Some other incidents. One of the things that we hope to avoid that happens whenever we have these large rainstorms was the flooding that happens on Meadow Street and in certain areas in town that we know are prone to flooding. And as much as we put the barriers up, people still seem to feel that you can just drive right into it. There are car stalls, and then we inevitably need to go out. And it's not so much that they are in need of rescue while they're in imminent danger, but some of the hazards in this water is foul. It has, it can have hazardous materials in it, contaminants of all kinds. And then underneath these streets, when there's flooding, you have manholes that can be in sewer, manhole covers that can become dislodged. And so just walking through the water, someone could drop into one of these holes.
Right.
So we always err on the side of caution. We put on our suits, we tie a rope, and we push a stick ahead of us to make sure that we're not going to fall in trying to help the person out of the car. But if people could just remember not to drive in standing water, that would be a great help for everybody.
Well, does the town put up barriers? I mean, I know Meadow Street is just a nightmare, but I mean,
Yeah, that's what
They
he said.
do,
They
yeah.
drive.
They put up barriers.
through
People
the
drive
bar-
around
and they
them.
drive around.
Drive around
Yes.
the barriers.
They drive around fire trucks with lights on that are blocking the streets. So,
Oh my God.
so it can be a challenge. But so those are some of the calls that occurred during the 2-month period. As you know, Lieutenant Harold Berringham was chosen as this year's Exchange Club Firefighter of the Year. He has consistently been a volunteer top responder, averaging over 300 calls annually. So our hats off to Harold. Myself and Commissioner Clem made the night, and it's always a good night.
Nice night.
Along with other first responders from both police and fire, from our neighboring communities as well. We completed, since our last meeting, we had the 2 special meetings before the Board of Finance to discuss the need for staffing. We made 2 presentations. One was a follow-up to the original presentation where we talked about the need for additional firefighters. And the goal of that was twofold. One, if we could convince the board that we, to agree that we need the additional manpower. And as you know, we talk about that every meeting here. And they agreed that, it's time to add additional personnel. And that's always kind of been the point in the past is it doesn't make sense to apply for a grant that may help you fund additional firefighters if we didn't really understand the need for the additional firefighters. So at the invitation of the First Selectman and the Board of Finance to make a presentation to talk publicly about it, which we did, and I appreciate the Board of Finance listening and taking their time as they did it. And there was many RTM members and other people that asked a lot of questions. So we did apply for SAFER. We got support from all of our congressional delegation. Senators Blumenthal, Murphy, and Congresswoman DeLauro have all written a letter of support. And we can only hope that in this competitive environment that we are lucky enough to receive that grant, which would fund 2 additional firefighters per shift for a total of 8 firefighters. Desperately needed manpower here for a variety of reasons. It's going to make a big difference when we're able to do that. We also talked about some contingencies for what should happen if we were not successful with the grant. It doesn't take away the need for these firefighters, but what it does do is we presented a couple of options to consider to make the impact of hiring 8 firefighters at once less over a period of time. And so we'll just see what happens as time goes on. But I do appreciate everybody's listening to that presentation, and it seemed to be well received.
Right.
We will be hosting a open house on June 2nd. The intent is to have community members meet with the firefighters, take a tour of the firehouse, watch various demonstrations, and just see all the various equipment. The nurses, the South Central Connecticut chapter of American Association of Critical Care Nurses, they are going to be hosting on the front lawn a hands-only CPR, which takes only 10 minutes to learn CPR. What we have learned over the years, American Heart Association has done a ton of research, and bystander compression-only CPR makes a big difference. It buys us the time we need, and it's really important. So they'll be doing that training as part of our open house on June 2nd, and along with many other things that are going on here that day. A lot of good stuff for children at home, touch a truck, and some hands-on demonstrations that the kids can participate in. And I also invited our RTM members to the open house. I'm going to be personally walking them through at 11 or 2, depending on when they can make it, to just allow them the opportunity. As you know, we get new members every 2 years, and they might just not know all the different things that this department is responsible for and all the equipment that they fund. You should know where you're spending your money, so it's a good opportunity for them to do that. Other than that, we've talked about the ambulance revenue, and the recruits are graduated, so we're good.
Okay, all right. I added 2 things to the agenda. We did receive letters back in early April from Short Beach and from Company 5 to hold their fundraising committees, fundraising. But we did it by email with the approval, and I just felt that maybe for official purposes that we put it in the minutes that we did approve. So could someone make
I'll move the approval of both of those fundraising events.
I'll second it.
Good, okay. All approved?
Aye.
Okay. Yeah, it just felt, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need
It's
to
in the
do it.
record now.
Yeah. All right, I don't believe we have anything else.
Motion to adjourn?
Yep.
I'll second it.
Okay. All approved?
Aye.
Okay, we're out at 7.
The preceding program was brought to you through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.